Yeah,
there.
I've heard it's good for that.
Okay. Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And today I am really excited. I don't know if you're really excited, but I'm really excited. We have David Meerman Scott with us. I first ran across David when he wrote his book, New Rules of Marketing and PR, which is a bunch of years ago. And from there, being a inveterate Grateful Dead head, I have seen every keyboard player for the Grateful Dead, so I guess that makes me official.
Yeah, that's official. Pigpen is rare.
Yeah, well, that was, I'm old, so I got to do that. And his newest book is Fanocracy, which he wrote with his daughter, so that might have been pretty fun to do. But we're going to talk about the Grateful Dead and marketing and business practices that people really need to learn from the jam band community. And for those who don't know what the jam band community is, it's bands who play with lots of improvisation and the songs go for a long time. So let's bring David on. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Josh. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I really appreciate you being here. So you and Brian Halligan decided to sit down and write a book about the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And not the usual book about the Grateful Dead, about the business practices of the Grateful Dead, specifically the marketing practices of the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And, I think the first thing I ran across from the Grateful Dead, which I thought was really interesting marketing, was when I was in college, which was on the second Live Dead album. They had this little thing in the back that said, Deadheads Unite.
Yeah.
This is your address and we'll keep in touch. And they did that because they got into a big, I was going to say something different, argument with Ticketmaster. And they decided to start selling their own tickets.
They did.
So let's start there. They were so far ahead of the rest of the world with that. What do you think brought that about, and what effect did that have on the general world of music and marketing?
Well, there are a couple of really important issues around this. Pioneering, actually, was the first thing is that the vast majority of bands, especially the bigger bands, didn't know who their customers were. Because if somebody bought an album, they weren't buying the album from the band, they were buying the album from the record store. And if someone was buying a ticket, they weren't buying a ticket from the band, they were buying a ticket from the venue or the electronic ticketing agency. At that point, it was Ticketron, if you remember. And so the Grateful Dead were super clever in that they said, hey, we want to know who these people are. Why don't we just stick a little notice in the album, as you said, and see if anybody reaches out and gives us their mailing address. And they didn't. There was kind of an experiment. They didn't know what was going to happen, and a whole bunch of people wanted to be on the mailing list. And then all of a sudden now, they know who their better customers are. They know who the customers are that are big enough fan to write a letter and say, please add me to the mailing list. And then from there, they had an opportunity to create little, I think you would call them a zine that they would send out. And then also soon after, they created a hotline for when the shows are that you could call an 800 number and listen to a recorded hotline. And then they started to sell their own tickets, which was super pioneering because no other, except for tiny bands, but no other big band was selling their own tickets. And what they could do with selling their own tickets was figure out who is going to get the best seats in the house. And those were the people who bought the tickets directly from the band. And so it was a really great way to build fans because most bands, it'd be either random who got the best seats or the scalpers would get the first seats. And the true fans had trouble getting the good seats. But with the Grateful Dead, if you were on the mailing list, you had a great shot at getting the best seats in the house. So it's all really, really, really good marketing.
Yeah, I think it really comes from the Dead's respect for their audience.
Yes.
I mean,
I would agree with that. I would
they
agree with
always treated their audience like adults,
yeah, yeah.
meaning that, I think they were the first band that allowed people to tape freely their shows. They didn't care if you brought in recording equipment. In fact, if you've been to a Grateful Dead show, there was a taper section which eventually appeared, but you would often see people all over the audience in the early 70s with great big booms up with microphones and reel-to-reel players that they dragged in with them. And they let people trade tapes as long as they didn't charge for them.
Right. As long as you didn't sell the recording, they were totally cool with you doing it. And it was such a contrast with every other band, because on the ticket of every other band, in the early era, maybe it was the Rolling Stones or Pink Floyd or the Who, whatever it is, it would say no recording allowed, no photography allowed, no taping allowed. It would say so on the ticket, and then they'd have signs on the door, and the Grateful Dead are sure, why not? Not only was it okay, but they gave the people who wanted to tape a special section, which was right behind the mixing board, which was a great spot for sound, and not such a great spot to see because you're on the floor, you're looking over the heads of lots and lots of different people, but a great place for good sound. And that was essentially viral marketing before Mark Zuckerberg was even born, because once people started to record the concerts, and initially it was cassette tapes, and later on it became MP3 files. When people had those concert recordings, they would, I remember distinctly, my friends and I would play it in dorm rooms in college or in cars in high school and college. And that was how we exposed the music to other people. And then I would be playing the music in my cassette tape, and I had a really good stereo. I had one of the best stereos of anyone around my dorm. So people would come into my room to listen to the Dead, and then they would want to go see a show. So It was viral marketing to get people to buy tickets to go see the shows, and they made most of their money from their live shows. So it was, and I've had a chance to speak with Bobby Weir about it. He said it wasn't for marketing purposes. It was because we just wanted to do the right thing by the fans. If they wanted to tape, we were cool with that. But it turned out to be amazing marketing.
Well, again, it goes back to respect for your customers.
Yes, I think you're right.
They would have never said we respect our customers, but the truth is they did by their actions.
Absolutely right. They totally did. I'll give you another example of that, respecting your fans or your customers. So pretty soon after they formed, there was a whole tribe of people that built up around the band, and a lot of people would actually follow them from one city to another city over the course of a summer and see multiple shows. And many of those people were sort of vagabonds. I never did that. I would go to multiple shows, but I never did the whole camping. And
I was the same way. I would see 5 or 6 shows in the year, but I didn't do the 28 shows in the year.
No, I was never part of that caravan. But there were quite a few people, several hundred people, that did the whole tour, and multiple years did that whole tour. And they had to support themselves. They were not independently wealthy. And so a lot of them ended up specializing in something and selling it at the venue. Some people made grilled cheese sandwiches. Some people did beer. And many people did logo merchandise. They would sell T-shirts with a Grateful Dead logo on it, or they would sell other things with Grateful Dead logo on it. And in the beginning, the band said, that's okay. They're fans. They're small-time operators selling a couple of dozen T-shirts a night. We'll just let it ride. But then they started to see that there were some pretty big operators that started to get into it. And that's when they cracked down, but they cracked down in a way that that was super fan friendly. They didn't say, you can't sell T-shirts outside the venue because we're selling T-shirts inside the venue. That's what all the other bands did. The Grateful Dead said, okay, if you want to sell T-shirts outside as an independent business, we're cool with that. We just want you to sign a licensing deal. You'll be able to license the logo, and you pay us a small fee for every T-shirt you sell, and everybody's happy. And that was a great way to do it. It was a very fan-friendly way to do it, because then all of a sudden you had all these very clever people who were doing really interesting things with the logo, putting them on baby clothes, putting them on blankets. The logo just went into some. I've got actually a logo on my coffee cup right here. And I didn't buy that at a show, but I did buy. It's more recent. I bought it online. But those people who use those logos just paid a small fee, and that was a really great way, I think, to build fans. It brought in a little bit of money to the band, but it was more about having a lot of people with Grateful Dead logo merchandise out there.
Well, that's the thing that you really want people to do. I mean, the truth is, if someone's walking around with a Grateful Dead T-shirt, and some of these Grateful Dead T-shirts are just really interesting. It's marketing.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Oh, it's fascinating. Yeah.
I mean, think about this. This is a band who didn't have a hit until sometime in the 80s when Touch of Grey came out. I remember seeing them in 1972 at the Boston Garden with 19,000 people, with a band who really didn't get much play on radio because their songs were too long. And they sold out 2 nights. I mean, Fish is doing the same thing today. I mean, they sold 13 shows out at Madison Square Garden 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What band can do that besides the Rolling Stones?
Yeah. No, it's truly remarkable, and it's because they chose a different business model. The normal business model at the time was you recorded the album, you made most of your money on album sales, and the tour was to support the album. It was to get people in certain cities excited. Oh, the band is here. I should check out their album before I go to the show. The Grateful Dead were kind of the opposite. Their business was focused on touring. And yes, they had albums, but they never made that much money on the albums. Most of the money they made from tour revenue. And so a lot of the things that they did to optimize tour revenue were built around generating interest among the fans so that they would want to go to multiple shows throughout the year and throughout their life. I'm at 75 shows. I don't know how many you've got, Josh, but
well, it depends on if we're counting Dead
I'm
shows.
actually I'm including the post Jerry bands that have at least one Grateful Dead member.
Yes, I call that Remnants of the Dead.
Remnants of the Dead.
Yes, and I'm a little bit over 100 with both of those combined.
Okay, yeah.
I became a huge Phil Lesh and Friends fan, and I would go see them 6-7 times a year when Joan Osborne was playing with them.
Oh yeah. I've seen them,
which I thought were just and Larry Campbell.
Yeah,
those were just ridiculous shows. But
yeah, those were great. I agree. Those were great shows. And Dead and Company now is actually a fabulous band.
Yeah, and so is Joe Russo's Almost Dead, which doesn't have any Dead members, but there you.
Yeah, yeah.
So the jam band world has followed the Grateful Dead's lead. I mean, String Cheese Incident has followed their playbook. Fish has definitely followed their playbook.
Yeah.
There's a new band in Vermont, Twiddle, which is following the playbook.
Yeah.
And it's only that small community of the music business that has followed the playbook.
Mm-hmm.
Why hasn't the rest of the industry said, this works, we should be doing this?
Well, I think part of it you actually hit on in your introduction. Part of it is that the music of a jam band is conducive to people wanting to go to multiple shows. If you go to a Rolling Stones show tonight and another Rolling Stones show a couple of days from tonight, the shows are going to be almost identical. There might be a couple of different songs, but for the most part, 80% of the set list is going to be identical. If you go to 2 different jam band shows, either the Grateful Dead or Fish or Twiddle or any of the other ones, and you go once tonight and you go again 2 or 3 nights from now, it's highly unlikely that you will hear the same song twice. And so what's different is that you never know what they're going to play. You never know how they're going to play it. You never know whether the song you've heard before is going to be 5 minutes and done, or go 20 minutes. The whole idea of a jam band is you just never know, and that's actually one of the cool and exciting parts of it. And you know, people are always trying to predict what's the opener going to be tonight. You know, what are they going to do for the encore tonight? You know, and oh my God, can you believe that they played this song and then they played that song next? And people who get really geeky about it, and I'm not in that category, I don't get too geeky about it, but people who do, it's a remarkable thing. And that's why people have, in the early days, it was cassette tapes, why they collected multiple cassette tapes of shows, because each one was different. And now, and this is another part of their marketing, which is really interesting, the Grateful Dead recorded most of their shows. The band recorded most of their shows. And so those recordings have been in the vault. And I don't know how many times, 6 or 8 times a year, they actually release one of the recordings as an official recording on CD or MP3 files. And members of the Grateful Dead's fan base eagerly buy them up, you know, even though they've heard the songs many, many times in many different formats, they want to have that version. And even though that particular show is probably available for free on the internet, people are still going to pay because it's slightly better quality and it's got the packaging, the CD and whatnot. So I think that the jam band world is uniquely positioned based on the type of music they have for this kind of approach to music.
You know, it seemed to me, I remember I went to see Chick Corea play out in San Diego several years ago. And I happened to be staying at the place they were playing. So I went out in my balcony with my camera and started taking pictures of the sound check.
Oh, cool.
And their manager came running up to me and screamed at me to stop taking pictures.
Oh, wow.
And I'm sitting there saying to myself, the only thing that's going to happen with these pictures, they might end up on Facebook.
Right, which is a good thing.
Somebody might come and watch the show as a result of that.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it almost goes to the point of being idiocracy.
Yeah. It's just a different way of looking at it. You know, some people go to incredible extremes. I'm a big Jack White fan. I really love Jack White's music. I've seen Jack White, I don't know, 12 times. The last Jack White show I went to, which would have been about 2 years ago, was the House of Blues in Boston. They actually had a special pouch. And when you arrive at the venue, you have to put your mobile phone into the special pouch, and then the pouch is sealed, and you get like a claim check for it. And then the pouch goes into storage for the entire show. And when the show is over, you come back, give your claim check, you get the pouch, you pull out your mobile phone, give the pouch back. Jack White goes so far into the no pictures thing that you literally have to give up your mobile phone when you walk into the show. And so, you know, I don't know that that's necessarily bad, because it's creating a different experience, because people at a Jack White show are only into the music. They're not into trying to capture the images or even a little video, and they're not constantly looking down at their phones. They're focused on the stage. And I think that's one of the reasons that Jack White does that. But I certainly agree with you that a photograph from your balcony of soundcheck is something that they ought to love. They ought to love that as a way to generate interest in the band.
They should.
I want to tell you a taper story. So
okay.
You probably know what a Betty board is, right?
Yep, sure
Betty
do.
Cantor is the Grateful Dead's longtime recording. She recorded the show. She was a sound woman at many of the Grateful Dead live shows, and she would be the person who would make the recordings of the live shows. So I had a speaking engagement in San Francisco about 10 years ago, and I was like 500 people in the room, and I was presenting. And I was about halfway through my presentation, and then I had a riff at that time where I talked about the Grateful Dead, and I talked about marketing lessons from the Grateful Dead. So I held up my copy of, this is my marketing lessons from the Grateful Dead, and I did a riff about how Grateful Dead allowed fans to record their concerts. And then it was like a 5-minute riff in a 1-hour speech. And at the end of my speech, I finished up and jumped off the stage. And what I usually do after I present at an event like that is I'll thank the people who work, sort of the backstage type people. So in this case, the mixing board is front of house, so it's in the front part of the stage. So everyone people had left, and I was gathering my belongings, and I went back to the back, and I went to the mixing board. I said, thank you very much to the lighting guy. I said, thank you very much to the video person. And the woman was doing soundboard, and I said, thank you very much. And she goes, David, that was great. I'm Betty Cantor. So I am absolutely, I was floored. I was, oh my God, that's ridiculous. I'm so glad you didn't tell me that before, and I'd be too nervous to get on stage. That the famous Betty Cantor of the Grateful Dead is still running mixing boards in San Francisco, but for corporate events now.
That's a great thing. So David, we'd only have a couple minutes left, and I'm kind of curious, if I'm a Main Street business, what lessons would you say you could get from the Dead that would be useful for you today?
So there's a few things, and you don't have to know anything about the Grateful Dead. And the first one is that do it for the fans. Run your business for your fans, or if you want to call them customers, that's fine. Focus on your customers. I always believe, and the newest book I wrote called Fanocracy that you mentioned at the top of the show, we dug into the idea of how and why people become fans of a product or service or an idea. And it turns out that the more you give to the universe, the more you give to your customers, the more generous you are, the more that comes back to you and your business, and the more money you make. That's a general rule of thumb that seems to work. Like, Josh, why are you doing this podcast, this video podcast? I would argue you're doing it to give to the universe, to provide something valuable. And perhaps you love doing it, but also you expect maybe at some point something will come back to me with value. And it's exactly the same reason I'm here being a guest on your show. And I think if you go into your business with the idea that you want to be helpful to people, that you want to be generous to people, that you want to give to people, like the Grateful Dead allowing people to record concerts or allowing them to make T-shirts as long as they give a small royalty for the use of the logo, those things then come back to you in the form of generating more customers for your business.
That's a great lesson. So, David, unfortunately, we are out of time.
Bummer.
And yeah, bummer. We could go on. I mean, I could do this, Grateful Dead geek out stuff over business practices for days, but how would people find you, and say a word or two about Fanocracy? Because for some reason, that book just appeared in my house. I don't know how it ended up here.
That's funny.
I think your PR people just sent it to me for some reason.
Oh, that's good. That's good of them. They're doing their job. So I was talking to my daughter, Reiko. She's now 28, about 5 years ago. And I said, hey, Reiko, I'm just such a massive fan of live music in general, Grateful Dead in particular. She started to talk about how huge a fan she is of Japanese K-pop and also Harry Potter. So we just talked about what it's like to be a fan of the things we love. And then over the course of several car rides where I was in a car with her, we just chatted about these things. Over dinner, we chatted about these things. And then all of a sudden I said, you know what? I think there's a book here. Would you like to co-write a book with me? And she was like, what? What are you talking about? Are you nuts? And then when she thought about it, she said, yeah, I do want to write a book with you. So, I'm a late middle-aged white man, and my daughter Reiko is a young millennial mixed race woman. She's just graduated from medical school. She's now an emergency room doctor at Boston Medical Center doing her residency. And we're very, very different people. We love different things. one's a man, one's a woman, one's young, one's not young. And it was a great collaboration because we both have the same idea of fandom, yet we're coming at it from utterly different perspectives. So it's super cool to write with her. She's a wonderful writer. She has some great stories in the book, and everyone who's read it comes back to us and says that the partnership of the two of us writing it is great. And if anyone's a Tony Robbins fan, Tony Robbins wrote the foreword to that book, Fanocracy.
I was actually at the seminar Tony was discovered, which is a different story. And unfortunately, we don't have time to go over that, but
sounds like a good one.
It is a good one. It's a short one. I'll tell you afterwards. So, David, how does somebody find you?
So my full name, David Meerman Scott. I'm the only one in the world. So if you Google me, you will find me. Or you could Google Fanocracy and you'll find us in the book that way. On the social networks, I am DM Scott, DMSCOTT.
Cool. And I have two things I'd like you to do. First, and this is really important, please, 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 you get the idea. Please go to wherever you're listening to this podcast and give us an honest rating review. If you love the show, say you love it. If you hate it, which I hope you don't do, you can say you hate it too. And the second thing is, I like kind of doing, strange little various experiments every once in a while. And about 20 years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine who put together this thing called the periodic table of estate planning elements, which is all the things you could do with estate planning. Not very exciting. I work with blue-collar businesses. Blue-collar businesses need lots of tactics and strategies to be successful. So I stole the idea and I built my own periodic table of business elements. Really easy to get. You just go to www.stage2planning.com/periodic, and you'll get your own copy of our periodic table of business elements. And you too can see all the fun things you can do with your business. So this is Josh Patrick. We're with David Meerman Scott. You're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon.